For better or for worse, I've really enjoyed creating content with College Football 26 so far, whether it's been recording my Middle Tennessee Dynasty, streaming my Bowling Green Nuzlocke Dynasty, or playing games in the FGCFL with Colorado State. With that being said, Madden 26 is coming out soon, and I intend on doing a franchise on the channel as well. Although NCAA 14 was the game that I started out with on the channel back in 2017, Madden has been a key part of the channel's growth as well. In Madden 18, I did a franchise with the New York Jets that lasted over 3 seasons. In Madden 19, I did a franchise with Washington that I didn't make it over a season with because, let's be honest, Madden 19 was arguably the worst Madden ever created, and given the state of the games over the past few years, that's saying something. Madden 20, I ended up making it through 3 seasons with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but I feel like the series had a little too much influence from my Baltimore State dynasty back in NCAA 14, and I had a lot of personal life issues arise, which really stagnated the series. In Madden 21, I went with the Los Angeles Chargers, but only made it through 2 seasons, and I ended up rebooting it late in the year before just dropping it completely. And I ultimately skipped out on Madden 22, but then when Madden 23 came out, I ended up producing probably my most fun franchise out of all of them, the Atlanta Falcons franchise. It certainly produced one of the greatest games ever on the channel, with my Super Bowl appearance against the Browns being a channel classic. In Madden 24, I used my favorite team, the Tennessee Titans, but I ended up making that a stream-only franchise. Last year in Madden 25, I used the Los Angeles Rams, but I got bored of it pretty immediately. This season, I'm willing to do a longer-term franchise in Madden 26, as long as I'm having a good time with the game. I feel like that's really been the determining factor of whether or not I continue a series, and as long as the game is playable and it doesn't completely irk me every time I play it, I'll keep it going. Before we get into the 3 teams that I'm considering for my Madden 26 franchise, I'll briefly talk about 3 teams that I almost made finalists, but decided not to go with for one reason or another, and these are certainly teams that you could rebuild if you wanted to. In other words, these are my honorable mentions. For starters, as a Tennessee Titans fan, this would have been the perfect season to use the Titans in franchise mode. You got the number 1 overall pick in Cam Ward, who starts out as a 71 overall, which is crazy to me, but that's Madden for you. Aside from that, you have a pretty solid mix of both young players and veterans. Tony Pollard, Calvin Ridley, and Tyler Lockett are all getting up there in age, but at least the first 2 are players that can contribute for you in the first few couple of seasons. And you also have a plethora of younger players you can develop, like Tajay Spears, Shimmery DK, Alec Iomenor, and Gunnar Helm if you choose to not re-sign Chiga Okonkwo. You also have a much improved offensive line with the likes of J.C. Latham and Dan Moore as bookends, and a pretty imposing interior line with Peter Skoronski, Lloyd Cushenberry, and the veteran Kevin Zeitler. Defensively, the Titans get a little worse. They do have a strong front line with Jeffrey Simmons and T'Vondre Sweat, but their linebacking core aside from Cody Barton leaves a lot to be desired. You also have a pretty decent secondary as well with the likes of L'Jarius Sneed, Jarvis Brownlee, Roger McCreary, Amani Hooker, and Xavier Woods. And pretty much the only reason I didn't pick the Titans is pretty simple. Like I mentioned, I used them in Madden 24. Aside from that, this is a pretty solid team to rebuild if you want to rebuild a team that nobody really pays attention to. Beyond that, aside from the Texans, I wouldn't really say the AFC South is all that competitive. That's not to say that I think the Titans will compete this year. I'm just saying it's going to be relatively easy to surpass the Colts and Jaguars after the first season, if not sooner, if you know what you're doing. Here's hoping it happens sooner rather than later in real life, though. Second on the list is the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland's a team that I gave a decent amount of thought to as far as rebuilding them goes. As far as the quarterback situation goes, you're not short on choices with Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, Dylan Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders, and I guess Deshaun Watson if you want to be an absolute demon, all at your disposal. You also get rookie running back Quinshon Judkins along with Jerome Ford, who's shown sparks of being a starting caliber running back. Passing options include Jerry Jeudy, who had his breakthrough season last year after struggling in Denver for so many years, Cedric Tillman, who's developing into a decent receiver, David Njoku, who's getting up there in age but is still solid, and rookie tight end Harold Fannin, who a lot of people see as being a sleeper out of Bowling Green. The offensive line is solid, but most of them outside of DeJuan Jones are aging or in the last year of their contract. Having to replace Jack Conklin, Joel Bitonio, Wyatt Teller, and Ethan Posick is going to be tough. Defensively, the Browns aren't too bad off, though. Myles Garrett obviously will still hold it down, and Mason Graham has a lot of potential. And Denzel Ward, despite his age, is still one of the best corners in the league. And although he won't play IRL this season, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah has been developing into one of the better all-around linebackers in the league. The Browns are definitely not a bad choice, but they just didn't end up making the cut. I just like the teams that I ended up picking a little bit better. Last on the honorable mention list is the Carolina Panthers, and let me tell you, they were very close to being selected as one of the 3 finalists. Bryce Young had a much improved sophomore season last year after getting benched a few times early in the season and suffering an injury. He's got plenty of solid running mates in the offense, including running backs Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle, and receivers Tet McMillan, Xavier Leggett, and Adam Thielen. They also have a pretty solid offensive line as well. Defensively is really where you're going to have to worry about this team, because aside from Derek Brown and J.C. Horn, the Panthers really don't have many imposing players on the defense. So while developing the young players is important on offense, building the defense is also going to be a big part of the rebuild as well. I really did consider the Panthers to be a potential rebuilding team, but I just found the other options that I ended up choosing a little more alluring, same with the Browns. Here are the 3 teams that I am considering for my Madden 26 franchise. Number 1 is a team that I considered for my Madden 24 and 25 franchise, the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers are a team that has been a fixture in the playoffs more times than not over the past 2 decades, but since the retirement of Ben Roethlisberger back in 2022, they've been in a bit of a no man's land lately, and they really haven't found their replacement for him at quarterback. Future Hall of Famer Aaron Rodgers comes over after 2 snake-bitten seasons with the Jets, but at the ripe age of 41, he's only really going to be a bridge quarterback at best. Long-term, the only real options are either to try to build the team around Will Howard, the rookie coming off of a national championship victory with Ohio State, or find a QB in the draft. That's not the only issue on this offense, however. With Najee Harris taking his talents out west, the Steelers have a bit of uncertainty at the running back position. Jaylen Warren has shown flashes of being a starting caliber running back, but that certainly isn't set in stone. And he does have Caleb Johnson, the rookie out of Iowa, to compete with, along with former Eagle Kenneth Gainwell. The real issue in Pittsburgh is the receiving corps. Aside from the newly acquired DK Metcalf, the Steelers' receiving corps isn't exactly what I'd call stacked. Roman Wilson out of Michigan is somebody that you could develop, and Calvin Austin has shown flashes of being a dependable receiver, but aside from that, the aging Robert Woods, Scotty Miller, and Ben Skowronek aren't exactly world beaters at wide receiver. They don't have too much to worry about at the tight end position with the acquisition of Jonnu Smith to go along with Pat Freiermuth and Darnell Washington, and it actually opens things up to where one of the latter can possibly be dealt for draft capital. The Steelers' offensive line is pretty solid, even with Dan Moore joining my favorite team out in the Music City, with tackles Troy Fautanu and Broderick Jones being first-round picks in the previous 2 drafts, and guard Isaac Seumalo coming off of a Pro Bowl season. Defensively, the team will be fine for at least the first season, but with a lot of aging veterans on the squad like Cameron Hayward, TJ Watt, Darius Slay, and Jalen Ramsey, we're definitely going to have to do some investing as far as draft capital goes into rebuilding the defense in the very near future. Combine that with having to play in the AFC North, where you have to deal with the likes of Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and Myles Garrett. Rebuilding this team is not going to be for the faint of heart. All in all, if there was a season to really do a Steelers rebuild, this might actually be the year, regardless of how good this team is on paper. The second team that I'm considering is a team that I feel like a lot of creators are going to gravitate towards, and that is the New Orleans Saints. This is a team that has really struggled to replace their future Hall of Fame quarterback, as they haven't even made the playoffs since Drew Brees retired back in 2021, after many seasons of being Super Bowl contenders and only getting 1 ring out of it. The options at quarterback might actually have someone give Brees a call and see if he'd want to come out of retirement. With Derek Carr now gone, the starting job is up for grabs. Spencer Rattler was incredibly mid last season, though a pretty lackluster offense as a whole did not help him in the slightest. This season he has a bit more competition, with the Saints spending their 2nd round pick on Tyler Shaw. who will be 26 this September and comes into the league with a very dubious injury history, though he did play all 12 games last season at Louisville and actually looked pretty promising. Aside from that, they have Jake Haener, so yeah, not really what you would call a promising QB situation. Now, there is the option of seeing what Taysom Hill could do at the position, but he'd probably just be better off sticking to his role as a gadget player that can play QB in a pinch. Alvin Kamara is now 30 years old, so figuring out the running back situation is also going to be something to do with this team. Kendre Miller and rookie Devin Neal are both options, and they also do have Cam Akers, but it wouldn't be a bad idea to look through free agency or the draft to look for Kamara's eventual replacement. The receiving core certainly leaves a lot to be desired. Chris Olave was pretty good for the Saints in his first 2 seasons, but unfortunately suffered 2 concussions last season, so hopefully he'll be able to stay healthy. Aside from him, the Saints have Rashid Shaheed, who really hasn't had much of a breakthrough outside of being a kick returner and is coming off of a knee injury. Then you have the veteran Brandon Cooks, who returns to the team that drafted him back in 2014 and can still produce when called upon, and Bub Means, who had a pretty quiet rookie season. I'd probably have to look elsewhere to find a second option next to Olave. Juwan Johnson is set to be the starting tight end for the next 3 seasons after signing an extension, and of course, the previously mentioned Taysom Hill serves as tight end too, as well as the gadget player in the offense. The offensive line seems like it has pretty good potential as well. They spent their last 2 first-round picks on tackles Tylese Fuaga and Kelvin Banks Jr., so they're already setting up anyone who rebuilds this team with a good piece to start on both sides. Trevor Penning is moving to guard, and it might actually help his chances of sticking and being a contributor. And with the likes of Cesar Ruiz and Eric McCoy, you got a pretty formidable offensive line potentially. Defensively is where this team could end up struggling. They're switching to a 3-4, and there are a few aging veterans likely to start, including Cameron Jordan and Demario Davis, and now we're going to have to replace Tyrann Mathieu, who just recently retired. But there are still some pretty good young pieces on this defense, like defensive lineman Brian Bresee and cornerback Kool-Aid McKinstry. Building up this defense, especially on the edge and in the secondary, is going to be very important moving forward. All in all, the Saints are likely going to be one of the worst teams in the league this year, and I can see a few other content creators trying their hand at rebuilding them. Will I? Well, we'll just have to wait to find out. The last team that I'm considering is the Las Vegas Raiders. This is a team that I've considered using a franchise for a few years now, just like the Steelers, but this might be the season I make it happen. The Raiders have made it to the playoffs just 1 time since 2017, and ever since Derek Carr broke his leg back in 2016, this team just really has struggled to be competitive. They may have just found their short-term option at quarterback with Geno Smith, who revitalized his career with the Seahawks over the past few seasons. Smith will be on the Raiders' books for the next 3 seasons, and that's ample time to find a long-term answer at the quarterback position. The 2 players on offense that are really interesting are running back Ashton Jeanty and tight end Brock Bowers. Jeanty was an absolute phenomenon last season with Boise State, and he could end up being one of the best running backs in the league if he's developed properly. Bowers was a bright spot in an otherwise gloomy season last year for the Raiders, and with 3 years left on his rookie deal, developing him into one of the premier tight ends in the league is a very feasible task. Aside from those 2, however, there really isn't a whole lot to like about this Raiders offense, at least when it comes to skill position players. Their receiving core leaves a lot to be desired, with the likes of Trey Tucker, Jacoby Myers, and Dante Thornton. And behind Bowers, you have tight end Michael Mayer, who actually could be a good option to possibly trade or develop if you want to run a 2 tight end set. But their offensive line seems to be pretty decent with the addition of Alex Kappa to go along with Jackson Powers-Johnson, Colton Miller, Dylan Parham, and DJ Glaze. They're not the strongest unit in the world, and you may have to make some moves to make them better, but there are definitely worse units in the league. Defensively is where I'm really concerned about this team. Max Crosby is one of the few bright spots on this defense, but beyond him, there really isn't much to write home about. Christian Wilkins just got released from the team, so you're already going to have a big hole in the defensive line. And then Malcolm Koonce could end up being a solid contributor if he can stay healthy. And you're definitely going to need good pass rushers when you're dealing with the likes of Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and Bo Nix twice a year. Their linebacking core is full of veteran talent with the likes of Landon Roberts, Jermaine Pratt, and Devin White. There is some young talent there, including second-year player Tommy Eichenberg. The secondary is probably one of the worst in the league, however, with the likes of Darian Porter, Eric Storks, and Darnay Holmes at corner, and the veteran Jeremy Chin teaming up with Isaiah Polamao. As a whole, the Raiders are another team that can be seen as a popular rebuild choice, especially with how unimposing the defense looks, and being able to utilize Genty and Bowers should be fun. Those are the 3 teams that I'm considering for my Madden 26 franchise here on this channel. If you feel like I missed out on a team, let me know in the comment section what team you think I should have mentioned, at least as an honorable mention. If you want to check out the franchise when it drops, or if you want to check out some of my College Football 26 Dynasty content, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button and turn your notifications on. And hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. Hit the dislike button if you disliked it. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.